There we go.
Humble.
On Facebook, on YouTube, v'chul. Okay, so
Okay.
in Shulchan Aruch with Mishna Berura, Hilchos Shabbos 271. So when he comes to his house, he should. What's how you say Yemahir? He should quicken. He should go quickly and eat immediately.
Fasting, quickly.
He should fast, yeah. He should go fast. Okay, so Mishna Berura, Yemahir lechel hainu lekadish, meaning to make kiddush. Not he's not referring specifically to eating. This is referring to Kiddush, Kadesh, Yizkir Shabbos, Be'ez, Tchilas Knisasi. That he should remember Shabbos at the time of its coming in, meaning as close as possible to when Shabbos entered. The Chol Kama de Mikadminan the earlier you do it, because the closer you do Kiddush to when Shabbos came in, the better it is. Now, since you have to make Kiddush already, he has to eat right away. Oh, he got fancy book holders.
Oh yeah, we're getting out the.
I use music stands, but so now since you have to make Kiddush, right? It's the closest as possible. Since you made Kiddush already, so now you have to eat right away. Like explained in a later Simon, Reishain Gimel, Sif Gimel Ba'da in Ramah over there. So now he says, the Mishna says, but if he does not want to, he's not hungry. So he can wait. He still has to make Kiddush right away, but he doesn't have to eat right away. He can wait until he's hungry. So why? Because he already mentioned, right? He already did Kiddush in his in Shul. According to the Rambam, you already fulfill your obligation of the Torah obligation to make Kiddush when you say in Shemin Esrei, right? When you say Kiddush there, right? Baruch atah Mekadesh Shabbos. So that's you're making Kiddush,
right?
And that's from the like Magen Avram. Like the Magen Avram says there in the name of the Ramah. However, it still seems that that when there's an issue of shalim bayis, of peace in the house, or that there are servants or other guests in the house, we've got and specifically a poor guest. He should in either case not tarry. Why? Because even if he's not hungry, but he made Kiddush and his wife is hungry, then mitzat shalom bayis. He has to make sure that his wife won't be hungry. And if he has guests, especially if they're poor people, they might have been hungry for a while now already. For sure, you have to make sure they're not hungry. The cave they told him of that since, in other words, he has a responsibility towards them, so he should not push it off because he wants to have a more preferential mitzvah. Meaning he wants to wait till he's hungry so that he'll enjoy the Shabbos meal, which is a preferential way to eat the Shabbos meal. But he has to consider that there's other hungry people, and this is more important than he is being a chinyak and doing the mitzvah in the Shabbos way. Miyad, base in the Mishnah Berura. You should make sure to read Kriya Shema before that. Right. In this topic, it's like he's talking about a case where Shabbos was taken upon early.
Okay, hello, summertime Shabbos minions, right?
Right. So if you took Shabbos early, which in Chabad is not the minhag necessarily, but
Not the common minhag.
Well, it's not the minhag, but it's not against halacha or whatever, anything like that. But about the minhag is we generally don't do that. But let's say he did. Actually, by the way, in some places in Chabad they do that, because, for example, if you have a Chabad house and you're in a place where Ma'ariv is not going to be till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you're not going to get a minyan, and you're not going to be able to, the people aren't going to have a Shabbos davening or whatever. There's places in the Chabad house where they do obviously there's guidelines to how early you're allowed to do it, but they'll do it the earlier possible thing, and then Krishma later, because you have to make sure that people, as a shliach in a Chabad house, you have a job to make sure that the people have a minyan, that they do, etc. But so, anyways, if there's a question of if he possibly said Krishma by Ma'ariv and it wasn't Tzeis yet, right? Then he should make sure to say Krishma again.
You're supposed to make Kiddush right away, but Krishma still takes priority.
Yeah, well, not just that. Especially even in shul, right? Even in shul, if you daven Ma'ariv, and right, so you do Kiddush, right? But you do Krishma first.
Right.
First comes Krishma. That's your
right.
First foundation.
We don't make Kiddush before Ma'ariv.
Yeah.
You're allowed to daven Ma'ariv beforehand. It's okay.
So yeah.
Which is interesting, by the way, just to contrast this with regards to Menorah on Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Technically, the ideal way to do it is to do daven mincha with a minyan, go home, light your menorah right away, as soon as it becomes, this man, and then go back and daven Ma'ariv with a minyan. Now, Lamaisa, because it's hard to do that with minyanim, okay, we do it differently. But technically, especially if one doesn't, let's say, if one isn't daven with a minyan, or if there are multiple minyanim, if you are able to do that, really, that's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
I'm saying as opposed to here where it says no, even though the Mechaber says Maher, my friend, immediately, Miyad, Hasten and Miyad. I think this is on Miyad, excuse me. But right, when it says Miyad, no, you still daven Ma'ariv first, say Shema. Even if you already daven Ma'ariv, you can still delay even more to just say Krishma, even though I'll get it after Kiddush. No, say Krishma, just after design.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Rambam.
Fine. So, and
the Rambam.
The Kosovo Rambam Perchav Tesme Hilches Shabbos. You see that the Rambam says about Shabbos mitzvahs asim in Torah. It is a Torah obligation, and mitzvahs asay the Kaddish Yisima Shabbos b'dvarim to Kiddush on Shabbos with words. Shenemar, that it says Zoch Yisima Shabbos the Kaddish. Remember the Shabbos to make it holy. The Leimar, meaning Zachareu Zechiras Shevach v'Kiddush, meaning like remember it with remembrances of praise and holiness and the the rabbinical obligation was added that the cup should be on a cup of wine. So meaning if you already said Mekadosh Shabbos according to the Rambam in davening, you already fulfilled your obligation of Kiddush and the reason then when you come home you make Kiddush again is because you further have a rabbinical obligation to make Kiddush on wine. And so to the Tosfos wrote in Masechah Sukkah Daf Lamed Ches and the Nazir Daf Dalid Da'ala Yayin Hurak Midrabanan. The Kosovo Magen Avram, and the Magen Avram writes the Lefi Zemi that Eis B'Kiddush she'emed Tefillah. So according to this, that from as far as the Torah is concerned, that which you did in shul that you in the davening is enough to fulfill the Torah part of the obligation. Anyways, the K'ra Ksiv Zachar Yisima Shabbos V'Hari Zachar Yitzay, and because he already He already did, that's the Torah obligation. Zachar Yom Shabbos. The kiddush became suda midrabanan, and making kiddush on wine in a place where the meal is, that's midrabanan. That's a rabbinical obligation. Like the Beis Yosef writes in the Magen Avram Ra'aya L'Zem in Gemara, and the Magen Avram brings a proof to this from the Gemara. That he is fulfills his obligation by saying it in davening. Al Kain, therefore, in Kiddush Eloi, if he is not sure if he made Kiddush or not, Tzarich Lachzer Ein Tzarich Lachzer L'Kaddish. Now he's talking about his about he knows he said Kiddush in davening, but he doesn't remember if he said Kiddush on a cup of wine or not. So in this case, according to the Magen Avram, being that that's only a midrabanon, it's only a rabbinical obligation, he would actually not go back and make Kiddush again. Why? Because when you have a doubt on a rabbinical obligation, you go to the lenient. As opposed to if it was a Torah obligation, then he would be required to say Kiddush again if he had a doubt, if he didn't say it already. Gam also, additionally, and this is the Prima God in this part. But anyways, the previous part. Gam also, the cotton she that according to this, if you have a doubt if you made Kiddush or not, you would be able to fulfill the obligation by listening to a minor, not like a coal miner, but a minor, yeah. But not a coal miner, but just a regular miner. A child.
Yeah.
Why? So long as the adult already davened, meaning that his Torah obligation he fulfilled. Now he just has left his rabbinical obligation. Why is because the reason would be because a child has a rabbinical obligation to
meaning. So it's the same as the adult if the adult's already daven ma'ariv.
If the adult hasn't daven ma'ariv obligation, he already fulfilled his Torah obligation in the davening. So they both have the same. In other words, the reason generally that a child cannot be yaitze, cannot take out the obligation of an adult is the child only has from education. He has chinuch, he has a rabbinical obligation. Whereas the adult has a Torah obligation, and somebody who only has a rabbinical obligation can't fulfill the obligation for somebody who has a Torah obligation. But in this case, since he already did the davening, he already fulfilled his obligation from the Torah, he only is left with a rabbinical obligation. So the child who also has a rabbinical obligation because of education, so he could listen to the child's kiddush. If he's not sure if he did it, then he could, and this is enough.
Fulfill the obligation for.
However, you could this the Mishna saying that what's the word for lepakpek?
They question it.
Question it, yeah, a lot. The meaning is this is very questionable. He finds it. The Hakaim Malon El B'Simin Samach Siv Dalid. The mitzvah is tzvifas kavana. Let's say it's basiyas a mitzvah. Why? Because we find before that mitzvahs need intent. In order to fulfill the mitzvah, you have to do it intentionally. Like for example, now kavanah in this case doesn't mean like having like for example, somebody putting tefillin, right? Someone putting on tefillin, he doesn't have to have the intentions of if he does it without all the intentions of the yechudim that he's making through Shema and the yechudim of tefillin and etc. He still fulfills the obligation. But here it's talking about a simple intent. You have to have intended to put the tefillin on. If you didn't intend to if the tefillin fell on you and then the things flew around your arm and you didn't have any intention, that's more of a problem.
If I wake up really early in the morning, I'm very tired, and I put my heart pressure band on my arm, but then I realize it doesn't count. It doesn't count. I can still make
a basic intent that I intend to do the mitzvah.
I can still make a bracha on the tefillin later. It's all good. Yeah.
And probably the general way of doing it that people do is not to have the intention to fulfill the Torah obligation of Zachar Yom Shabbos L'Kacha. Remember the Shabbos day holy.
So I'm going to go home soon and make
Right, they don't
Kiddush.
have that intention. They're just davening. They don't when they're saying the Mekadesh Shabbos, they're not having in mind to fulfill the obligation, which is funny because I generally do have that in mind. I mean, I don't know. Well, you're saying Mekadesh Shabbos, so I don't know. Maybe sometimes when people are rushing, I guess they wouldn't have it in mind.
To be Mekadesh the Shabbos, but not with a bracha, with the Kiddush. Yeah, the day is holy. It's interesting.
You mean maybe they're not having in mind specifically to fulfill the mitzvah through the saying of Mekadesh Shabbos.
Yeah, I'm praising the fact that Hashem makes this day holy right now, but am I doing the mitzvah?
Right,
it's
like a nice thing in davening. I'm praising Hashem, but I'm not right. I'm not intending to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay, that makes sense.
I would say similar to Atachainin.
That I can't say I do every time. So I have a mind that I'm doing the mitzvahs asay midiraisa of Mekadesh Shabbos.
I say the same thing by Atachain Antanu. Even though that's a Havdalah, but we're still allowed to make the bracha of Havdalah later. It's not a bracha of Havdalah because no one's thinking, oh, this is my Havdalah now. No, I'm going after Ma'ariv. I'm going to go home and I'm going to make a real Havdalah. Or after Ma'ariv, the show is going to make a real Havdalah.
But that's more of a problem because if that's the case, how do you just drive home?
It's interesting. I think because you get into there's two components, and maybe the same applies here, where there's the actual like. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe there's the sanctifying of the day. I don't know. It's a good question.
Because remember, if you made it in shul and then you go and made it again, so first of all, fine, we know you still have a rabbinical obligation that you have to fulfill, so that's one thing. But the second thing is it's not like you're doing any prohibitions in the meantime. Whereas with Shabbos, if you didn't make Havdalah and now you're going and doing something prohibited on Shabbos, you got a problem. Unless by Havdalah there's a similar thing of there's the fact of making Havdalah and there's making Havdalah on wine, which is a separate thing.
Right.
Because with Havdalah specifically, right? Like if they're making Havdalah in shul and you're going to make it at home, you're supposed to have in mind that you're not being yaitza with that, because otherwise it's actually a problem of making Havdalah later at home.
Yeah.
So
even bigger than Kiddush. Yeah.
But now we're in Hilchos Kiddush, so we'll deal with this first.
Yeah. So well, let's go ahead. Maybe let's make the distinction between what's this Kiddush that I'm doing in davening versus over the cup. Maybe he'll.
Well, right, but in this case also he has. I mean, we know clear he still has an additional obligation with Rabbanan that he didn't fulfill yet.
No, but he's saying the whole thing is that a kid making Kiddush, just the Rabbanan, it's not good enough because there's still a component of the Iraisa that's here. I think he continues on as.
No. He's talking about something else. He's referring specifically to the idea of being yaitza, of a kid being yaitza you.
Yeah, so he's trying to say
right.
that.
Now he's trying to say he's saying it's talking true that midiraisa you could be you could fulfill your obligation during davening
with the davening Kiddush.
And it's true. However, for the most part, people aren't having that in mind. Whereas by contrast, when you're with your cup of Kiddush and you're making Kiddush, you are having in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of, like you're making. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm doing. I'm making Kiddush.
It's very interesting, by the way, and how most Ashkenazi shows actually do it that way. Right after they make, right after they're saying Magen Ava, he said, and Mekadesh Shabbos, they make Kiddush in shul.
Yeah.
So they do it right away. But let's continue on because I think he's still.
Anyway,
at this point.
So fine. So he says that the people generally they're not having in mind
to do the Kiddush that he has at home.
The Kiddush in shul, they're not having in mind that that's the actual Kiddush. כיוון שיש לי יין פס ויכול לקדיש עליהן אחר כך בברכה כדין, since he knows he's going to go home and make Kiddush after. כיוון שיש וטוב יסר שיצא אז המצווה שעשה דאורייתא משהייתי עתה ויהיה בלי קייס ושלי מבום מצודה. And not only that, but it's even better to be yoytze the mitzvah as opposed to separately being yoytze the midiraisa and separately being yoytze the what's it called? It's better to do it together, to be yoytze like
meaning even the deiraisa part of it. It's better to fulfill
it's better
that
to do with wine. Meaning I'm fulfilling my mitzvah deiraisa and in the way that the Rabbanan specified. As opposed to, I fulfilled my mitzvah deraisa, and now I'm going to go and just fulfill my Rabbanan part.
Right.
So, anyways, all of this he's using to support the fact that why he should not be yotze from a kid if he has a suffix, but rather he would have to do it himself because he still has his deraisa obligation because mistama he didn't have in mind.
Right. It's interesting. I feel like it's more why you should not be yotze. Like you could technically, but you shouldn't because
in this case it would seem that he can't even, because if we're saying that Mistami did not fulfill his deiraisa obligation, then a child cannot fulfill his deiraisa for him. Listening to a child.
The next lines. Hold on. It's not mamash the next words.
And other reasons that there are also to question. And so therefore we should hold back. We hold back from doing this thing with listening to a child to be to fulfill the Kiddush obligation. Even if he's going to say it with the child word for word, we should also hold back from this. If not that he has in front of himself also wine or kiddush. Because by the way, there are such cases when you would say it word for word. Like for example, that's the proper way. If somebody who doesn't know how to make kiddush.
Right. You just say the word and
there's no siddur or there's no whatever or something. He would say it word for word. He would hold the cup and say it the whole word for word after the child. And that's fine. But he's being yotze his own one. But that's different. But he's holding his own cup of wine and has a lechem Mishna in front of him. But if only the child has the wine and a lechem Mishna, then it's not good.
Right.
So know that Kiddush of Yom Tov is midrabanan, is only a rabbinical obligation, as opposed to the Kiddush of Shabbos, which is a Torah obligation. Still, it has the same laws as Kiddush on Shabbos. However, if he only has one cup of wine and you have a Friday is Yom Tov and Shabbos is Shabbos the next day, or even say it's a Friday Shabbos Yom Tov, right? Let's say it would be Yom Tov is on Friday and Shabbos,
like Shavuos, like we just had.
Exactly. So in that case, and you only have one cup of wine, you would keep it. In this case, you would keep it for Shabbos.
Save your wine for Shabbos. And Yom Tov
you would make kiddush on the bread, because even though b'peil Yom Tov we do keep, even though it's a rabbinical obligation, even though we do keep generally the same like for
the rules.
Right.
Even though the rules are the same,
but still the fact Shabbos Kiddush is more stringent because it's actually from the Torah.
Right. Has more value, I guess, in this way. Or it's a little heavier, stringent.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, continuing on.
Gimel, I think is in base. I think that's already in base. Okay, so let's go back to them. Nashim chayavis b'kiddush. Women are obligated in kiddush.
Af al pishu mitzvah sasei shazman grama, even though it is a mitzvah, it's a positive commandment that hinges on time, which, as we know, the general rule that mitzvahs that hinge on time, such as Kiddush Levana, women
Hey,
women are not obligated in it. We won't go into the opinions on Kiddush Levana that they shouldn't do it because that's controversial. But
I thought the Rebbe. Oh no.
anyways, hey, listen, we have to if it's gonna be a proper podcast, it has to have some shock value. So we have to bring up shocking things like women in Kiddush Levana. Anyways, women generally are not obligated in commandments that are connected that hinge on time.
Right. I like how you right away the Rama explains what is man grama. It's the same the Rama explains.
Because man grama literally means man grama means literally that they're caused by time.
The time, yeah.
Means they're caused by time. So he explains it. That hinges on dependent, that depends on time. So even though usually that's the case, by Kiddush, not so. Why? Mishum de iska zocher lishomer, because we equate zocher and shomer. That by Shabbos it says there's two things. Zocher is same as Shabbos, right? And shomer is Shabbos.
Remember the Sabbath and then keep the Sabbath.
Which generally those refer to shomer, guard the Shabbos, refers to the negative commandments, and zocher the positive commandments. However, since women are obligated in the negative commandments of Shabbos, and since we make an equation between Zocher and Shomer, so when it comes to things that have to do with Shabbos, with the women are obligated in the positive mitzvahs because we make an equation remember Shabbos and guard.
Right.
The honey nashe hayil and since the women are obligated in guarding Shabbos, they're also obligated in remembering Shabbos. And therefore, a woman can fulfill the obligation of a man. So if a woman makes Kiddush, a man can fulfill his obligation by answering her Kiddush. Because they're obligated from the Torah just like men. So meaning, when you have another mitzvah, when there's a different mitzvah that has to do with time, right? By the way, we just learned this in the mezuzah, right? We learned in the mezuzah that since women are obligated in mezuzah, technically, a woman can make the bracha, even though it's not the minhag nowadays, but technically a woman can make the bracha on the mezuzah. Because she's obligated. In other words, the reason that in some mitzvahs a man would not fulfill his obligation by answering to a woman is because she does not have a Torah obligation to do that mitzvah. And in order to fulfill your obligation, the other person has to have the same level of obligation. Similar to how if I would make the bracha for duchening of a kayin, right, of the priestly blessing, and a kayin answers me, it doesn't work because I'm not a kayin. I have no obligation, a priestly blessing.
Right.
So a kayin answering me is nothing because my bracha doesn't carry. Well, in this case it's different. In this case, my bracha carries no obligation, and I'm mamish making a bracha of atalos, which is even worse. It's actually a bracha name because whereas a woman can make the bracha because she is allowed to do this mitzvah. However, because the obligation is not of the same degree, but in this case, no. It says the Mechaber that a man can answer to a woman making kiddush, and it is fine because a woman has the same level of obligation in kiddush like a man does.
Yep. Okay. Who's Amanda?
Then Amanda.
Who's Amanda?
Amanda, it's the owner of the panda.
Okay. So now the Holy Chavetz Chaim Zog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Iska Zocher L'Shomer. The Zocher is Mekachi Omer B'Divrei Rishonis. That it says Zocher is in Shabbos. Remember the Shabbos in the first Divrei, in the first commandments, 10 of the 10 commandments. V'Shomer is in Shabbos L'Kachi Omer B'Divrei Ha'acharenis. And in the last commandment, it says Shomer Yisem Shabbos Tekache Shneim B'Dibur Echad Nemru. They were both said in one utterance, right? That's just like we say in is it in L'Chadaydi Shomer V'Zacher B'Dibur Echad.
Right. There it is.
So that's what it means. That's what Shomer V'Zacher B'Dibur Echad means when we say in L'Chadaydi.
That's what we're talking about.
Remembering and guarding in one utterance. And instead, then the Abishter, as he has a different. He doesn't have a physical mouth like we have, and he can say two things at one time. Unlike by a human, when you say double talk, it means you said one thing and you thought something else because you can't say two things at one time. By the Abishter, he can say two things at one time. So he said Shomer and Zocher at the same time. He said Shomer and Zocher. Which explains why they're connected. That those things that anyone required in Shomer is required in Zocher as well. And Zocher is talking about the positive commandment of Kiddush, the canal. Like we said before, the Shomer and Shomer is talking about guarding yourself from doing the prohibited. What do you call it? How do you say malacha? The prohibited tasks or work on Shabbos. Yes. Just like in the prohibition of doing the prohibited labors on Shabbos, for sure the women have to also be careful. I mean, they're for sure obligated in it. That by negative commandments there is no difference between those connected to time and those not connected to time. That's only by positive commandments that there is such a difference. So just like by Shomer, which being a negative commandment, just like by guarding, the women are obligated. So too, since the one above said them at the same time by the commandment. So therefore, just like by Shomer, so too by Zocher, by the positive commandment of making Kiddush, women are also obligated. And therefore, it's obvious that just like based on what we said before, that a child cannot fulfill, a woman cannot fulfill her obligation by answering a child's Kiddush. That because just like we said before, you have to have the same level of obligation in order to fulfill to fulfill the command, to fulfill through somebody else the commandment. And here, so that's why, like the Mechaber says before, a man can fulfill his obligation through a woman. However, a woman would not be able to fulfill her obligation through a child because he only has from chinuch, from education, an obligation that's rabbinical. A woman has a Torah obligation. And even if he is 13 years old, we don't follow the assumption that he already brought the signs of an adult, right? That he has two pubic hairs. We don't assume that, which in some cases we do. There are certain, depending on what it is, there are certain cases when the kid's 13, we assume that he has that he's already physically become an adult.
With regards to being mighty someone else in a day, we have to make sure that he's hit puberty.
Which is funny because nowadays I don't think that's necessarily so as much the case, because there's certain things that we do, we don't. There are certain things even Midiraisa. I think we follow we go by the Chazaka. I mean, which not the thing that people are thinking, because I'll give you an example. People might be thinking, wait a second, so how do you hear a kid that's bar mitzvah, right, learn from the Torah? But well, the Torah is not the reading of the Torah is not an obligation from the Torah. So therefore, we can go by that chazaka. In other words, like we learned at a different time that it was Moshe instituted, and then later Ezra instituted different readings, and how these are extremely important things. And Halacha min Moshe l'Sinai, perhaps, but it's not an actual Torah obligation, counted amongst the 613 things. Where something counted among the 613 things, we would not be able to follow the chazaka. How would you say a chazaka? The chazaka means that it's something that we can rightfully assume or something like that. And there's certain cases when we're allowed to rightfully assume something. And this even applies to, like, for example, land or something. When somebody's living on land for a certain amount of time, he has a chazaka that there's a right to assume that he's the owner of this land. Because he's been on this land unopposed for a certain amount of time or whatever it is. Anyways, the Mila Deraisa, when it comes to things that are Torah, we do not rely on the chazaka. We do not rely on this legal assumption. The Mikavan Shegel the Klal Shon and Miguel the Klal Samanis that like we do in the other things that we assume that once he's turned 13, he physically he already has the required to be able to be considered an adult. Ad sheyismali zakona, until his beard becomes full. Like it says in Cheshen Mishpat 35, and therefore the woman should make kiddush by herself. And if she doesn't know how to make kiddush by herself, then she should say it word for word with the child's kiddush from beginning to the end, and she should have in mind not to have her obligation fulfilled through his kiddush, but rather that she's fulfilling it through her own kiddush. And in this way, since she's saying it herself, so like we said before, so then nachin sheyeh pas yayin munach gam lefon of beis hakiddush. That if you're doing it, saying it yourself, you can't be obligated by just saying it word for word, but rather the wine and or bread to be placed in front of her, since she's making her own kiddush. Since she's not being having her obligation fulfilled through the child's kiddush. And this, it doesn't make a difference even if he's a small child. That there's no question he didn't reach the physical signs of adulthood. Even if it's a 6-year-old and he knows kiddush, so he can say it, and she can do it this way because again she's not fulfilling her obligation through his kiddush. Rather, the child is essentially acting as a human sitter and saying the words, and she's saying her own kiddush, going word for word by what he said. But this is all if the woman did not daven ma'ariv. But if she daven ma'ariv, that according to the Magen Avram that we said before, she already fulfilled her obligation from the Torah to do kiddush. But so in this case, so she can rely on the 13-year-old to fulfill her kiddush obligation. Why? Again, like we said before, when can we not rely on the chazaka, on the legal of a 13-year-old that he has the proper physical attributes of an adult? That's only when it comes to a Torah obligation. But if she davened ma'ariv already, that according to the Magen Avram that we said before, she already fulfilled her Torah obligation, and now her only obligation remaining is the rabbinical obligation to make kiddush with wine. So at that point, so for that you can rely on the chazaka, you can rely on the legal assumption that the 13-year-old already has the physical attributes of an adult. The hainu shikaven lahitzia, that this meaning that he should have in mind to include her in the fulfilling of the obligation, which is, it's funny because he sticks it in like by the way, but that's an important thing that when somebody's making kiddush and somebody else is answering them to fulfill the obligation, the person making the kiddush needs to have in mind that they are including the other person to be fulfilled in the obligation. You could also just have in mind that stam, like and anyone who's listening and wants to fulfill their obligation to this kid, I'm considering anybody who wants to hear. That's also fine.
Right.
That's just my own. That's not written in here. Just to be clear, it's very important to be clear when something's written here, or when I'm just saying something. People shouldn't come with
Right.
Mishnah Berura.
The Chafetz Chaim said. I heard the Mishnah Berura said. No. That wasn't.
No.
That was.
No, it was Mendel Markel saying it, and it may be completely wrong, but that's my understanding. Kasa b'Sefer Eliyah Rabbah, it's written in the Sefer Eliyah Rabbah, Shnei Anashim, two people, Imreitzim Lohitzi b'nei Beisam, if they want to fulfill the obligation of the people of their households, Loi Yikachu Ka'achas, the Trei Kavri Loi Mishtami. They should not make Kiddush at the same time, because two voices you can't hear at one time. So therefore, for example, let's say on Shavuos, I was at my brother's house, and I made Kiddush for my family, and he made Kiddush for his family. So we don't do it at the same time. Rather, one of us does first for our family, and the other one does next for their family.
You take turns. It's very interesting.
Now,
I'll tell you.
Here is this is specifically when you are fulfilling other people's obligations. That's what it would seem, because when you're, even though, by the way, general, it seems like the minute has evolved that people do it all the time. Because, for example, then my son made his own Kiddush, one of my sons, and he didn't do it together. He did it as well. He can't do it together with us anyway, because because then he would be bludgeoning my Kiddush up, but that other people are listening to. But let's say him and my other son, that they were just making by themselves and not being yaitz anybody. In theory, they should make at the same time, because they're not. But the question is, does it apply to yourself also, to your own voice? If somebody else is making Kiddush, does it? But anyway.
Well, I guess that's what it comes down to. Is it mishtamai? Is it inaudible? Is it, as we tell the little kids, are your words bumping? Meaning, no, but someone makes Kiddush themselves, they can hear themselves. So I don't think it's a problem. But it is very interesting. That's the way it would seem anyways, yeah. Yeah, it is very interesting, because I've been in houses, my in-laws are always, everyone take your time, everyone after the other. But I've been in houses where they're like, okay,
so no, so everybody
else at the table just goes.
Nepal, we did the same thing that each one made, and then when he finished, the other one made. But that might also just be a matter of how you do it in a household, or not only that everybody wants to answer to the Kiddush, and it's
it's also practical,
more pleasant way of doing it. But it would seem halacha that there's no problem with making it if nobody else is being yaitzer.
Right. If words are getting bumped and it can't be heard, it's a problem. If not, it's okay.
The question is, can somebody else's voice bump your own words?
If you can't hear yourself, then yeah.
So it depends how loud the other guy is.
So if I'm making Kiddush like a nice quiet Shaila Babachar, and I'm standing next to a guy from Stolen Karlin, so he's screaming at the top of his lungs.
So basically, if I'm making Kiddush, nobody can make Kiddush at the same time.
Pretty much. Not just when you're making Kiddush. Even after you wash, even after you've washed, just the sounds of your are so loud.
Yeah, it's still. they have to actually send me out of the room. It's like Shalach is a Mendel in order to make Kiddush. Shalach is a Mendel, but the Kiddush tasala.
Okay. All right.
Continuing on.
So then it said she can make even for men.
Yeah, and they can fulfill their obligation by answering.
Valid. And so
the Taz, Magen Avram, and Gerah, and other Achreinim agreed with this.
Everybody's on board.
That she should be careful still to be lechatchila, not to be to make the obligation of men who are not from the people of her,
not family members.
Yeah, why the zila milsa?
They translate it here as dignified. Because I like the translation of zila.
I'm wondering if he means like it's not sneezed, kind of. It's
but it says it's not dignified. That's what they call it.
It's not a sneeze digger thing. It's not it's not
proper.
Yeah, it's inappropriate.
What's interesting though is you say, you bring up a good point, an interesting point, because there's two components. There's one, there's sneeze, But there's another component, even if it's not an issue of tznius, just bichlal of it's weird to say this, but there is a concept of status. There's a concept of just what's proper. Especially back in the day, you used to be women were more on the side of uneducated. So, who do you want blessing the home?
Even back then, even though maybe it was less common, but he's not differentiating between, because you had women who were very educated.
So
in those times, he's not differentiating. I think it's just a matter of I think it's a matter of tznius more. It's not like.
But it says it's the word used is not tznius. It's zila milsa. It's an interesting question, I think, to be brought up, to find out nowadays when there isn't this disparity between, there's not a disparity of classes between men and women with regards to what we call it. So especially with regards to who's more let's say a Talmud Chacham or Torah, not necessarily in many homes it's not.
Now, I mean, listen, I have to tell you, I know nowadays I know many women that know halacha better than I do. So
So I wonder
that there's very educated, that the women are very educated. And not only that, this is something that the Rebbe actually was pushed very strongly. Was the idea of women being educated.
Gotta learn.
Then you have furthermore, you have another thing also, is now by Sheva brachas. By Sheva brachas, there's an opinion that one of the brachas we don't say if the men and women are not seated separately.
Right.
So we don't go by that. There are opinions that hold that nowadays it's different because men and women are more accustomed to being in the same.
We're used to each other.
There's a change in that status. So would that apply to something like this as well? But in either case, I think based on his words, it sounds to me, anyway, again, this is just me, but it sounds like it would be clear that he says, meaning that in a situation, for example, let's say when we spoke about before, with the situation where there's a man who doesn't know how to make Kiddush, and maybe he can't. It's hard for him to even say word for word to help him say word for word his own Kiddush, or whatever it is. Where if not the man from another household is not going to hear Kiddush, in that case, I would imagine there would be room to not have this stringency, and that the woman should make Kiddush for him better than he shouldn't hear a Kiddush if there's no.
Absolutely. I don't think it's even viewed as a chumrah. I don't think I wouldn't even call it a chumrah. It's whatever. It's fine.
He says you shouldn't. You should not. It's better not to do it.
What's interesting is I'll jump in right now to the Alter Rebbe for a second, if you want to join me. It's Vav in Reish and Aleph. Just the wording here brings up. So the short Sifkat and Vav. Vav. Reish and Aleph. Vav.
Reish and Aleph. Vav.
So since women are obligated in Kiddush, okay, this is with regards to Shabbos day, but whatever. It's just the chalal. It's basically making Kiddush. That so hold on. Let me just make sure. So here it's lezalzo. See,
interesting. He used a different term here.
No, but it's similar. It's zila.
Similar.
Zila. It's the same shayrish.
Take it lightly.
That's what I'm saying. It's not mitzvah so much. It's because of the dynamic here. There is a dynamic between men and women.
Here? I don't know where he gets it from. So
it's Lamed Zayin.
Look here. No. There's a note here. This is in the this one, the Shulchan Aruch here with Bir Halacha, that on Shalai, that they shouldn't make it cheap. It says Shaharei ein hi chayeves b'kiddush mitzad mitzvahs asay ela mitzad chiyuv b'loy sasay. that even though it's true that we equate Shomer and Zacher, but being that her chiyuv, her obligation, comes from the fact that since she's obligated in the negative mitzvahs, so by extension she's obligated in the positive mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
So still, it's not really quite the same degree of obligation. So that's what it would seem to say from me. Which by the way, which has a whole different implication.
Right. It brings a whole interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, where did you get that from? Where's that from?
It says Re'ei Kevitz Pardes Chabad Gillian 9 Amud 90, which I don't have in front of me, so I can't look it up further. But and specifically, and this is where the wording of mitzvahs, they shouldn't come to make mitzvahs cheap, is that specifically being that we worry that since that people will see that and somebody will not realize that the mitzvah of Kiddush is different than other mitzvahs that's connected to time, and they'll come to think that a woman that a man can fulfill his obligation through a woman in any time connected mitzvah, not just Kiddush. That seems to be part of the. But even so, I still stand by the idea that if there's no other way. There's no that if there's a man who's not going to hear Kiddush, if they don't do it this way, then she should probably anyways make Kiddush for him.
Yeah, totally fine.
So anywho, and by the way, I just want to make a note because it's interesting to just for those who follow the halachas through Chabad should note that we're learning the Shulchan Aruch with Mishna Berura, which is the Piskei Dinim of the Chafetz Chaim, which actually much of the world goes by that as the final halacha. For those who follow the Chabad, we go the final rulings. We go by the Alter Rebbe, which we're going to do after we do the Mishna Berura. The Mishna Berura is very good for understanding, for coming down through the Mechaber and different ones of the placement. But those who follow the Piskei U'Minhagi Chabad, the rulings and traditions of Chabad, we go by the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which in most cases is very similar. There are very small points where sometimes where the ruling here will be one way, the Alter Rebbe may rule like let's say the Mishnah Berurah is ruling not like the Magen Avraham in a certain place. Sometimes the Alter Rebbe rules like the Magen Avraham. So just to bear in mind that. First of all, in general, just to bear in mind that this podcast is for educational purposes only. When it comes to actuals, to give an idea of halachic ideas, but should not be followed as your halachic guidance.
Ask your Elohim.
Rabbi. Yeah. Okay. So with that, we continue.
Hey.
Where are we? I lost my place.
Hey. In the
Mishnah Berurah. So we were saying that they can fulfill the obligation of a man since they have the same obligation. Therefore, even if she already was fulfilled to her obligation of Kiddush, just like with a man. Right, like we said before, by Havdalah, there's more of an issue of that. By Kiddush,
right.
if I make Kiddush in Shul, I can then go and make Kiddush again for my wife at home. If she wasn't in Shul that day and didn't hear Kiddush, then I can go home and or if my daughter came and she wasn't or whatever, or she missed the Kiddush, I can go make Kiddush again for her. Even after I heard Kiddush in Shul and made Kiddush in Shul and. Like we see later in 273 paragraph 4. Now when it comes to Kiddush, men and women are the same. They're equal.
Equality, baby.
Egalitarian. Yeah, equal. The dash, the and know that when one person fulfills his friend with a Kiddush, so now he stresses this thing that he has to have in mind that he is fulfilling, that his friend is fulfilling the obligation through his kiddush. Where am I here? So meaning the person making the kiddush has to have in mind that the other person will fulfill the kiddush obligation, and the person listening must also have in mind that their obligation is being fulfilled through the guy making kiddush now.
So therefore, nothing.
And see later in 273 what's written there in the Mishnah Berura.
So meaning,
yeah.
Wait. So just before you said what? Did you skip? I think you skipped. So lachein manachin sheyaskir balabayis v'nevesei.
I did. Therefore, the balabayis should mention. But when he's making kiddush, he should make sure before he makes kiddush, he should mention that that he's going to make kiddush, and everybody who wants to be included in this kiddush should have in mind to the yetzer.
As is seen in many households, they'll say, "Hey, whoever wants to be yetzer my kiddush can be yetzer." Just listen. I'm going to have in mind anyone who wants to be, stuff like that.
Right. No, so a step beyond. In other words, we're talking not just that sometimes you hear people say, "Okay, Tati's making kiddush."
Right. No, but that's what I'm saying. After that gets announced,
the whole point is to remind the people and make sure you and don't forget to have in mind to be yetzer.
That's exactly what I'm saying. In many households,
keep that in their mind the whole time. As long as they had in mind they're going to be yetzer with this kiddush, you don't have to keep it in. I'm going to be yetzer, I'm going to be yetzer.
Right.
But
I'm just saying, in many households, that is what's said. Literally, you'll hear this. You'll hear, "Hey, Tati's making kiddush," and then suddenly the Tati will go. He will lift the cup just before he starts. He goes, "Okay, whoever wants to be
whoever's being yetzer kiddush can be yetzer, right? I'm
having in mind whoever wants to have in mind.
Yeah, I'm having in mind to be yetzer in my kiddush, right?
Yeah. So that's if you ever see that now.
Savri Maranon, which by the way, that's in a way that's Savri Maranon, no? Like.
Right. So everyone on that, ever pay attention.
Hey guys, if you're
focus up, right? Yeah.
Okay. Some just like them, meaning that being that women have a chiyuv just like them, the men. Ach le'inyan zman yesh chiluk. Meaning as far as when their obligation, so even though they have the same obligation, but as far as the time the obligation begins, there is a difference. That by a man's that by a man it's when he turns 13. That then when a woman becomes 12, she is obligated in all of her mitzvahs, which means that a 12-year-old girl could be, might say, a man, but a 12-year-old boy cannot be, might say, a woman.
Exactly.
He does not make clear in this case how does it work with. What's the deal with how does it work with girls and them being 12 and the assumption of any of physical traits of adulthood or anything like that? But
no, that's still elsewhere in halacha. But I mean, what's the question?
I'm just saying he doesn't bring that specifically here. Why?
Right.
Because I guess there's only to a certain point where he's going to go into every single far-flung case that
he's assuming. I mentioned it before with regards to men.
You can, and anyways, and then based on the rules already set, that can be figured out, which we're not going to do right now. Okay, Gimel. Im ein yodim asages liknes yain lekiddush. If his hand does not reach, meaning it's really not so much his hand, it's more so his pocket. If his pocket does not reach, in order to buy wine for kiddush and to prepare the needs of the meal, both for an honor of the night and an honor of the day, and for the kiddush of the day, Mutav sheyikne yayin lekiddush halayla. Mimasha yochin tzarchi hasuda. Oy mimasha yikne yayin letzedich hayoyim. It's more important. It's better that he should buy kiddush for the night kiddush than that he should use that money to prepare the needs of the meal or for the kiddush of the day.
Meaning, not just that he's not going to have wine for Shabbos day. He's not even going to have anything for the meal. He's not gonna have
Right. Before we were talking about if you only have wine for one, right? The wine store is closed. You only have wine for one. In this case, we're talking about you can't afford it. It's either I'm
going to have a Shabbos
buy
meal,
wine or I can buy something for the meal, but I can't do both. Right. And I can for sure only buy the one wine and not two wine and not buy enough wine for both meals. So why? That which we've learned, that the honor of the day precedes the honor of the night, meaning that the daytime meal essentially is more important than the nighttime meal. This is specifically regarding the other needs of the Su'udah. But if he only has one cup for Kiddush, so regarding Kiddush, the honor of the night is more important than the honor of the day. So the night Kiddush is more important than the day Kiddush, and indeed even than the day Su'udah. However, when it comes to the Su'udah, to the meal, the day is more important than the night, as far as the meal goes. However, the wine, the kiddush at night is even more important. Just a beautiful story. I forget who it was right now, but somebody came to a Rav and asked him, can I do the 4 cups on milk, right? So he gave him whatever it was, $500. Go buy wine. So he says, but Rav, it doesn't cost $500 for wine. So he said, I'm assuming if you already have the problem, you can't afford wine, that you need to ask me, can you make it on milk? I'm assuming you also don't have meat, and you also don't have kugel, and you also don't have etc. Here's $500. Go and get what you need. So, which is actually very interesting, because this is to me, this is the real quality of a Rav. It's not the idea of just figuring out what the book says. It's also figuring out when the guys ask you a question, what's tutzich, what's the situation going on, and the obligation that, hang on a second, it's my this is a member in our, not just for a Rav, anybody, it's for all of us. That's the when somebody comes and asks us something, sometimes we have to be sensitive and read further and realize if there's a problem going on that we can maybe help. That's something deeper.
Right.
I have to give credit where it's due, because now I remembered where I heard that. I heard that on Reb Shia Rubinstein's he does on YouTube inspiring stories. So
nice.
He did that around Pesach time, when he was encouraging people, I think, to give money to an organization that helps people for Shabbos and Yom Tov. So that story just stuck in my mind, and my mind now when we're talking about wine and not being able to afford wine and this kind of thing. Okay, so quickly, let's go into the Mishna Berura. We only have like 3 minutes until the next shir this Zoom starts.
I just want to say it's a great shir.
Thanks, Ira.
Thank
good to have you. Ira Hakohen Katz.
When did this shir start?
The man, the myth, the legend. When does it start?
Is today the first day?
Today's the first one.
Well, today's the first day we're doing it on the Zoom.
Yeah, the first day. We came to a natural spot. We were able to do it on the Zoom. So
I hope you do it every day this time.
God willing, we're gonna try to continue
from
it.
9 o'clock. From 9 to 11.
It's funny. I now we have to, because we were discussing it before, and we said, we said, who cares to listen to us guys hacking and trying about.
I love it.
And then that was what we said. He said, who knows, if one person enjoys it, it's worth doing it. Well, we know one person enjoys it, so.
I tell you the truth, this is fabulous. It's better than just one rabbi, whether it's Rabbi Darren, Rabbi Rosenblum, Chaim Itkin, whatever. The two of you, it's my new thing. It's up there with YYJ.
Wow, that's big. That's big.
I'm telling you,
Side
man.
phrase.
Where's the other rabbi from? Are you in Pittsburgh too?
He's in
Yeah, I'm here in
Pittsburgh too.
I'm in Greenfield.
Beautiful. I'm okay. You're new to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, this is like basically a cross country Zoom. I'm in Squirrel
Ira.
Hill and he's all the way in Greenfield.
I'm in Greenfield. Ira, we've met. I'm Rabbi Weinstein's son-in-law, the fifth one, Welton. I'm son-in-law number 5.
Who's your wife?
Nechama
Nechama.
Weinstein. Daughter
well,
number 5.
I know Golda and I know Chani. I know Chani the oldest.
Yeah.
Right. Golda's the one married to my cousin.
So when did you guys start this year though? Just the other day?
No, we started
about
a year ago.
7 months ago, learning all kinds of topics. But
You never told me about it, Mendel. Shame on
no,
you.
because it didn't exist online. This is the first day it's online.
Well,
it wasn't this year.
And the reason
Ira.
it's online, Ira, is because the reason it's online now is because you were hacking me a chinik that we have to have a shir online every day. Well, here it is. I hope you like it because it's your fault.
Just let Hurstel in. I'm gonna let the boys know.
Tell everybody.
Sure.
What time
Sure.
tomorrow?
9 o'clock.
But it's 9 o'clock, but sometimes we start a little bit late, like we did today.
9 o'clock Jewish Standard Time.
Right. Start keeping an eye on it from about 9 o'clock, and we'll try to get on as soon as we can.
I love it. Just don't tell Chaim Mitkin.
Well, the whole YouTube and Facebook knows about it now.
He's on,
He's going to be on in about a minute.
and I'm going to close down and start the rest of my day.
We're his opening act.
Wait, Chaim Mitkin's coming on soon.
I know, but I got other things to do.
Oh, all right.
You guys are great. I love this. I love the back and forth. It's so invigorating.
Well, it's the podcast format. It's a discussion. It makes it exciting.
Chavrusa, the original podcast.
Beautiful. I can't believe you finally decided to listen to me for a change.
Yeah, I know. It's about time.
All right. I love you guys.
I love you.
See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, too. I can't wait.
Yep,
see ya.
Okay, so we're gonna. Yeah.
Will this be on YouTube so I can watch it again
It
later
is. It's on YouTube already right now, streaming live, and you'll be able to find it if you look at the link that I sent you to the channel.
I bookmarked you. You're my number 1 channel, baby. Love it.
I'm gonna turn off the live part of it now because it's on a different share.
I know. I understand. I'm gonna shut down too.